Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we delve into a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is February 16th. On this day in 1981, a murder in Brookfield, Connecticut sparked one of the most unusual legal defenses in U.S. history. When a young man named Arne Cheyenne Johnson fatally stabbed his landlord, Bono, he used a unique defense. The devil made me do it. This became the first time in American legal history that such a defense was attempted, earning it the nickname, the devil made me do it case. Was this a desperate legal strategy, or was something truly supernatural at play? Today, we'll break down the crime, the trial, and the cultural legacy of this bizarre case. Let's get started. At the center of this case is 19-year-old Arne Cheyenne Johnson, a tree surgeon who lived with his fiancée, Debbie Glatzful, in Brookfield, Connecticut. By all accounts, Arne was mild-mannered with no history of violence or any legal trouble. But on February 16th, 1981, everything changed. That day, Arne and Debbie went out for lunch with her 9-year-old cousin Mary and Arne's younger sister, Wanda. They were joined by Bono, their 40-year-old landlord, who was friendly, but was also known to get aggressive when he drank. During lunch, Bono became visibly intoxicated and tension started to rise. After eating, the group returned to Bono's apartment and things escalated quickly. According to witnesses, Bono grabbed Mary, who was just a child, and wouldn't let go. And this led to a heated argument between him and Arne. And then, in a sudden fit of rage, Arne pulled out a 5-inch pocket knife and stabbed Bono multiple times in the chest and stomach. Bono died from his injuries, making him the first recorded murder victim in Brookfield's 193-year history. It was a tragic, shocking crime, but no one was prepared for the defense that would follow. At first, this seemed like a straightforward case of manslaughter. But then Arne's fiancée Debbie made a startling claim. She said this was not an act of rage. According to Debbie, something much darker was at play. She told investigators that her younger brother, David Glatzful, had been tormented by a demon in the months leading up to the murder. Now, if you're a horror fan, that name may sound familiar. When David's family couldn't explain his violent outbursts and disturbing visions, they turned to famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. That's the same couple who inspired the Conjuring movies. The Warrens concluded that David was possessed and, with the help of Catholic priests, attempted a series of exorcisms. Then, during one of these exorcisms, something terrifying happened. The Warrens claimed that the demon left David and entered Arne. When Arne was charged with murder, his lawyer, Martin Minnella, saw an opportunity. Instead of arguing self-defense or diminished capacity, he planned to argue that Arne was possessed at the time of the murder. He told reporters, quote, "The courts have dealt with the existence of God, and now they'll be asked to deal with the existence of the devil," end quote. This obviously made headlines instantly. Legal experts, religious leaders, and the public were all divided. Some found this fascinating, while others laughed it off as just a publicity stunt. But before the jury could even consider it, Judge Robert Callahan shut it down, ruling that, quote, "There's no scientific basis for this defense in a court of law," end quote. So Minnella pivoted. He dropped the possession angle and focused on self-defense instead, which he honestly had a pretty good case for. The trial kicked off in October 1981 at Danbury Superior Court and drew nationwide media attention. Without the possession defense, it really just became a classic courtroom battle over what really happened that day and focused on the events that had led up to the stabbing. The The prosecution contended that Arne acted in anger, not self-defense. They said that while Bono was drunk and aggressive, he was not physically attacking anyone when Arne stabbed him. Therefore, this was a tragic but straightforward case of murder in the heat of the moment. The defense countered by emphasizing that Arne had no history of violence. He didn't just randomly decide to stab his landlord one day. He acted to protect Mary and Wanda from Bono's aggression. They argued that the killing was not premeditated, but a reasonable reaction to a perceived threat. Despite the fact that this turned into a relatively straightforward case, the trial lasted for 3 weeks, with every twist and turn splashed across national headlines. Even though the possession defense was thrown out by the judge, Debbie and the Warrens continued to insist that Arne had been under supernatural influence at the time of the killing. Eventually, after 15 hours of deliberation, the jury found Arne Cheyenne Johnson guilty of first-degree manslaughter. On November 24th, 1981, he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. Johnson ultimately only served 5 years before being released on parole for good behavior. This case wasn't just about one man's conviction. It left a lasting imprint on pop culture and law. This was the first and only time a U.S. court was asked to consider demonic possession as a legal defense. While it didn't hold up, it sparked discussions about the intersection of faith and law. But this case is also significant for another reason. Arne Johnson never actually said that the devil made him do it. In fact, he never claimed to have been possessed by anything at all. He simply said that he had blacked out and didn't remember what happened. It was the priests and the Warrens who said that he had been possessed at the time of the crime. Ed and Lorraine Warren capitalized on the attention, using this case to solidify their reputation. They framed it as proof of the supernatural, giving interviews, writing books, and inspiring films. Most notably, 2021's The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Again, even though the possession defense didn't make it into court, legal experts and religious figures still had to grapple with what this case meant for the justice system. But ultimately, it didn't end up setting any major precedents. Gabriella Miller wrote in the Vermont Law Review, quote, "Allowing such a claim would set a precedent for courts to allow lesser sentences for those who can convince the court that they were possessed. Without solid proof that spirits exist and can, in fact, possess people, the defense of demonic possession in court cases will likely remain ineffective." End quote. So, don't get any ideas. Arne Johnson served 5 years in prison for killing Alan Bono. In 1985, he and Debbie Glatzel got married while he was still in prison. Arne was released a year later, and the pair stayed together until Debbie's death in 2021. While the Devil Made Me Do It case didn't change the law, it does remain one of the most bizarre trials in American history. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. In the meantime, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!